Hello, this is Professor James Strickler, and this is Political Science 1101, American Government. In this lesson, we'll be in Unit 1, Theories of Government, and this is the first lesson where we define some words for you that you'll need to understand for future lessons. So, in this lesson, what you will learn is the meaning of the term politics, the meaning of the term state, the meaning of government, and the meaning of sovereignty. So let's begin with the word politics. Take a moment and think about in your own mind what that word might mean. Now you can see here on this slide that behind the question, what is politics? There's a picture of some men sitting around a room smoking cigars. This is one of the stereotypical ideas of politics. It's sometimes known as a smoke-filled room, where insiders get together to decide big political things, rather than it being out in the open in the normal world of politics. Well, that's one way that politics might be conducted, but politics is a more general concept than that. Politics can be defined as the process by which decisions are made about the distribution of power and resources among a group of people. A simpler way to put this might be, politics is how we decide who gets what. Now, politics takes place in families as well as in whole nations. It can be done through voting or through negotiation or even through the use of force. Whatever method is used, as you go through some sort of process to allocate resources among people, that's what politics is. The next term that we want to define is, what is a state? Now, when you ask this question to Americans, they typically misunderstand what that word state means. And it's because of an accident of our history. The accident of our history left us with the individual little parts of our country being labeled states. But that's not really what it means. A state can be properly defined as an organized community occupying a defined area and living under a common political authority. Now, when we talk about this area under a common political authority, what we're usually talking about regarding a state is supreme political authority. So it's the entire area under one government. Really, when we use the word state, we're talking about a country. So it's proper to use the word to talk about, say, the state of Israel, or the state of China, or something like that. Now, the reason we use this term state for subdivisions of our country rather than the country as a whole is because places like Georgia were their own countries at one time. The United States of America was formed from 13 independent little countries that got together, and thus they called their united country the United States of America. And since then, we've ended up using that word state to mean these smaller units. But properly used, it refers to a country. Now, keeping that in mind will help us later on understand the nature of our states, what they were to begin with, and what they've evolved to become. The next word we want to define that will help us as we go through this course is government. Now, again, take a moment and think about what that means to you. Usually when I ask people what government is, they come up with answers like, it's rules and laws, or they start talking about the structures of government, like the Congress or the president or something like that. And yes, it does encompass those sorts of things, but we need a more general definition of it. And so, in this course, we can define government as a formal system in which politics is conducted and by which a community is controlled. So a way to think about this is the place where those political decisions become legally binding on the community. So yes, there may be some smoke-filled room somewhere where a bunch of insiders sit around a table and they figure out what's going to actually happen politically. But that negotiation they have around that table by themselves doesn't make a rule for the rest of us. It's not until they move out into the open somewhere and pass some sort of law that then it becomes binding on the rest of us. And it's that formal system by which those rules are imposed on the whole community and control the rest of us that we call government. Next word I want to define for you is sovereignty. Now, this is a word that many people have never even heard that they can recall. But if they have heard it, they've probably heard it in connection with a king. Maybe in some movie or some television show, some character referred to a king as my sovereign or something like that. And that gives us a little bit of a clue of what this really means. A formal definition of it can be sovereignty is the right and power of an entity, such as a king, but not necessarily, to govern without interference from any outside authority. A simple way to think about this is the sovereign is the head power in whatever area he's in. There's no one above him to tell him what to do. And I say him because we're thinking about a king, but it doesn't have to be a king. It could be some other entity. As soon as there's someone above the sovereign that can tell the sovereign what to do, the sovereign's not sovereign anymore. To be sovereign, you have to be the top of the pyramid where there's no one above you that can boss you around. Okay, so now let's review what we learned in this lesson by going through some questions. And we'll do this at the end of each lesson to see if you can remember and understand the concepts that we have discussed. So begin by asking, what is politics? And here's some potential answers. Candidates and voting, the preferences of the public, controlling a certain area, or how we decide who gets what. Take a moment and think what you think is the best answer here. Well, the best answer, if you recall what we already talked about, is how we decide who gets what. That's what politics is. It's whatever process by which resources are allocated, whether it be negotiation, compromise, war, whatever. That's what politics is. Okay, next concept that we review is, what is a state? Is a state a subdivision of a country? Is it the area under the same ruler? Is it the condition of a thing? Or is it a public service provider? So think about that for a moment. Which one of these is the best answer? Now, I have to keep some of these answers fairly short, sort of abbreviated, fit them all on a slide like this. So there may be none of these answers that fit ideally the exact definition I gave you earlier. But try to think which one best fits it. In this case, the correct answer would be the area under the same ruler. So you have one geographic area that is ruled by one entity. That is a state. The next concept is, what is government? Some potential answers are rules to live by, or a system to control a community. Maybe our moral leaders, or institutions people depend on. Take a moment. Which of these answers would you pick to be the best? The correct answer is a system to control a community. Remember, I said this is where those political decisions become formal rules that we have to live our lives by. That's what government is. And the last concept that we learned in this lesson is sovereignty. So if we ask, what is sovereignty? And these are the potential answers. Which one do you think is right? Is it the process for resolving conflicts? Boundaries of a community? The ability to get things done? Or is it supreme political authority? The correct answer is supreme political authority. Remember, sovereignty is the idea that there's no one above you that can boss you around. If that's the case, you're sovereign. If not, you're not. Okay, that does it for lesson 1 in unit 1. Our next video will be from unit 1, and it will cover lesson 2 about government power.